Wait, that's happened? The real story of the Winter Olympics: ice, politics, and power. The Winter Olympics feel timeless, like they've always existed alongside snow and mountains and heroic athletes carving their names into ice. But the real story of the Winter Olympic Games is far stranger, messier, and more improvised than most people realize. The story starts with a problem. In the early 1900s, the Summer Olympics were already gaining prestige, but winter athletes were awkwardly squeezed into the margins. Figure skating and ice hockey appeared at the 1908 and 1920 Summer Games, which meant athletes were competing in winter sports. In summer. It was strange, inconvenient, and deeply unpopular with organizers who believed the Olympics should remain a warm-weather affair. Pierre de Coubertin, the founder of the modern Olympics, was especially skeptical. He feared splitting the games would weaken them. Winter sports, he believed, were too niche, too regional, too dependent on weather to ever stand on their own. Then came a compromise that accidentally changed history. In 1924, France hosted something called International Winter Sports Week in the Alpine town of Chamonix. Officially, it was not the Winter Olympics. It was framed as a side event, a polite nod to cold weather nations. But when athletes arrived, the energy was unmistakable. Speed skaters raced on frozen tracks. Ski jumpers flew off wooden ramps. Curlers slid stones across ice in competitions few outsiders had ever seen. The crowds came. The athletes loved it. And once it was over, everyone quietly admitted the truth. This wasn't a sideshow. It was the birth of something new. A year later, the International Olympic Committee retroactively declared it the first Winter Olympic Games. That success didn't mean smooth sailing. Early Winter Olympics were plagued by chaos. Events were canceled or altered at the last minute because of weather. Snowstorms ruined schedules. Warm spells melted courses. In 1932, at the Lake Placid Games, European speed skaters were outraged when Americans insisted on mass start races instead of the traditional pair format. Europeans called it unfair. Americans called it modern. The argument was so bitter that some countries threatened to boycott future games. It was an early reminder that the Olympics were never just about sport. They were about whose rules mattered. Then politics arrived, and everything changed. The 1936 Winter Olympics were held in Garmisch-Partenkirchen, Nazi Germany, just weeks before the infamous Summer Games in Berlin. The regime used the snow-covered mountains as a backdrop for propaganda, presenting an image of strength, unity, and control. Some athletes knew exactly what they were participating in. Others chose not to think about it. Medals were won, records were set, and beneath the spectacle, the world edged closer to war. Soon after, the Winter Olympics vanished entirely. World War II canceled the 1940 and 1944 Games, and for over a decade, the ice went silent. When the Winter Olympics returned in 1948, they carried a different weight. Held in a recovering Europe, they symbolized survival more than glory. Athletes competed in borrowed equipment. Nations rebuilt teams from scratch. The games felt smaller, humbler, but deeply emotional. This era also saw the rise of new winter legends, as technology began transforming sports. Skis became lighter, tracks faster, training more scientific. What once looked like controlled falling began to resemble precision engineering on ice. The Cold War turned the Winter Olympics into a battleground without bullets. The Soviet Union entered in 1956 and immediately dominated, treating athletic success as proof of ideological superiority. Medal tables became political scoreboards. Athletes trained under intense pressure, sometimes from childhood. Meanwhile, moments of humanity broke through the tension, none more famous than the 1980 Miracle on Ice, when a team of American college players defeated the heavily favored Soviet hockey machine. It wasn't just a game, it felt like history cracking for a moment. Even after the Cold War thawed, the Winter Olympics continued to evolve. Snowboarding arrived after fierce resistance from traditionalists. Extreme sports replaced polite elegance. Cities competed fiercely to host. Even as costs exploded and public support wavered, climate change now threatens the very foundation of winter sport, forcing organizers to move events higher, colder, and further from reliable snow. The Winter Olympics were never inevitable. They were improvised, disputed, politicized, and reinvented again and again. What began as a hesitant experiment became a global spectacle balanced on ice that has never been entirely stable. If you enjoyed this strange piece of history, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe for more.